What was your sense of the debates? I know before they started, a lot of us were like, "Oh, this is like some Exeter debate guy. He should rock that shit."
Well, yeah, I mean, it was great because I thought he did. I personally, the debates always gave me a great chuckle. One of my favorite things that I loved during the cycle was we participated in these staff walkthroughs that happened like I want to say a day or two before each debate, and it felt like kind of like the
Oops.
I felt like a lot of the campaigns got along really well, and certainly we had friends on different some of the different camps. I worked with some of the folks who worked on other races myself in earlier capacities, but you know, I would always say it was interesting to you get a glimpse of how these campaigns were going based off of how you see the staffers carry themselves in these walkthroughs, and we would go on the stage, and you know. I absolutely love the fact that Andrew didn't care about, you know, things like wearing a tie and like the traditional political mind. It's messed up. I mean, you can Google this stuff where it takes you through the science of like tie colors and like why you should wear red or blue and what it conveys. And I think I joked with Tim Ryan before I saw Andrew do this. I was like, hey man, if you want to make an impression, just wear a piano key necktie. No one will see it coming. And I'll be like, that's freaking wild. And Andrew not wearing one at all also gave the same amount of attention. But like he always said, it did feel like a reality show. And I feel the same way about things like, house hearings and all that stuff where, you know, are we really here to help the country understand what kind of leadership they want? Or are we here to see these folks pontificate and, you know, and grandstand in a lot of different regards? And it's funny, and it's also worrisome and troublesome because, you know, you have these advisors and you have these strategists who will tell your candidate things like, you know, you need to attack so-and-so, you need to do this. And they always forget that, you know, after this is all said and done, there's going to be a nominee, and that person's already been attacked from their own end. And you saw candidates go after Joe. And Andrew never played that game. He was always issue focused. And, you know, I was actually here. It was the first debate watch party I'd ever been to since college. And I was actually nervous because it felt kind of like a blind date, except with a person who was in the campaign. And, you know, Scott Fenton lives here in New Orleans as well. And so he had the Nola Yang gang had a watch party here. I took a friend of mine and we went over there, and that was when Andrew's big announcement was giving 10 families the freedom dividend. And, you know, I remember Andrew getting laughed at, all those other pieces, which is wild. I mean, and, you know, I will say it was a pretty wild thing to do on a stage that's usually reserved for serious bickering and all that stuff, to do something as fun as being able to announce a money giveaway. But, you know, quite frankly, I'd love to be able to talk to those people and see how that money's been helping them out. But in the debates in general, I felt were in a way not very conducive as they should have been to really helping the American people understand who they should pick. I felt like, especially in the early stages, the candidates who did make the stage just used it as an opportunity to get to the next stage. You know, they would say, dang, I need to get, you know, with the debate thresholds being either 1% or the donor numbers, like, gosh, I need to do something to be able to hit that donor number, or I need to, you know, do something to be able to move from 0 to 1% in certain places. And so it certainly, you know, it wasn't a perfect process. For Andrew, it certainly wasn't a perfect process because he collectively had like 18 minutes over 4 or 5 debates or something.
Yeah.
But man, leave it to Andrew Yang. Again, the operator's mindset to take that limited amount of time and literally make more out of it than the candidates who had 2 or 3 times the amount of time to speak. So, you know, that was another head-banging piece of frustration. But, you know, I'm glad that Andrew, to his credit, didn't let it shake his positivity, not even one bit. he would lead those stages and just be eager and ready to continue campaigning.
Do you think he could have done anything to get more time, or did the team talk to the organizers, say, hey, you know, our candidate has a history of not getting asked any freaking questions. Can you try and make sure this is fair? Like, I'm sure those happen. Like, tell us a little bit about how the campaign and the team tried to make sure he got fair treatment.
Well, Tom, you know Zach Grauman.
Yeah.
And you know Zach's the type of guy that doesn't let any of these things just sit on the ground. Like, he was, I mean, if you've ever wanted to see someone turn as bright red as a thermometer, it was Zach Grauman after any of these situations would unfold. And you know, he would hold everyone's feet to the fire when these situations would happen, because it was so blatantly unfair, and it would always be the same thing. Well, you know, we wanted to give equal time, and it's hard. It's not a perfect process, but like, you know, sure, we understand that, and you know, you do have the crowd appeals, but when you make it so abundantly obvious at points that you're just not there, and honestly, you know, what could have Andrew have done? Interjected more. We saw that, you know, for the candidates that did do that or raise their voice loud enough to just drown out the other candidates, that those approaches were really held in high regard to the average voter. Like, you know, I remember those critiques like, Andrew needs to yell, he needs to do this. I'm like, it's not Andrew Yang. It's not Andrew Yang. You know,
I think Kirsten Gillibrand tried that, but it didn't come off well on screen, at least from watching on TV.
And you remember Bill de Blasio, he came off just looking angry when he debated, because his approach was like, I'm the freakishly tall dude who's just going to interject and shout over everybody. And it really rubbed people the wrong way. You know, people within the infrastructure. And so, I mean, I think, you know, what Andrew's PowerPoint is I'm a very intelligent human being with really great ideas, and I'm going to use the time that I am to be able to project those things. And to that extent, and, you know, I referenced that Ohio debate earlier, it obviously, at the very least, became popular enough for the candidates' campaigns to whisper in their candidates' ear and be like, hey, compliment Andrew Yang. Like, or let's honor this guy. He's going places. And those parts are tough. But I mean, we did push back. Zach certainly pushed back and made it known how we were felt. And, you know, we wanted to kind of toe the balance between making sure we didn't burn any bridges to that extent, but also call the BS when it happened. And that was a really disappointing part. I mean, I know it was frustrating, Andrew, but you know, it was more so disappointing because you look at those thresholds and the amount of work that candidates had to do to get to that. And you certainly see someone like Andrew who didn't have, you know, the built-in networks or the connections that the other candidates did, to work so hard to just kind of get, you know, in some ways just beat around by not getting that equality in those circumstances. It doesn't feel very conducive to the Democratic Party I grew up understanding. And that's another piece that I hope that, you know, both the DNC and the networks take as lessons learned going into the next presidential cycle we see.
I'm going to take some audience questions in a minute. My last question for you, Eric, is what did you ever talk to the other campaigns? Did they ever say like, yeah, your guy's getting the shaft? I don't know why. No, we did. I mean, we had a chance to talk with, I mean, you know, Andrew himself was friendly with pretty much every single candidate, which you know, on both angles made us more approachable and easier to speak with than most. And we would have other campaigns talk with us at many different points to just say, hey, you know, Andrew had a great debate performance and it was BS that he didn't get more time. Or, you know, it's BS that Andrew's fundraising totals weren't included in that graphic, or I can't believe they got his name or his picture wrong. And that's absurd. I mean, there's more camaraderie than it appears in that situation. And, you know, for example, back in 2010 was my first time working with those. We worked in different capacities, Elizabeth from Pete's campaign.
we worked in different capacities throughout that. And she certainly was a great mentor for me going into that situation entirely, but also, was great in terms of being someone who, absolutely admired the campaign that Andrew was running and talked about that in a lot of different ways, but also, would definitely reach out to us in those situations to be like, hey, that's bull. And, I've mentioned that. And, other folks would talk to reporters to mention some of the disparities that were happening on our campaign, which was enduring to see, because obviously, it wasn't their job to do that. They had their own candidates to worry about. But, really and ultimately, it comes back on these major networks. And there's going to be a lot of work to be done. But I'm glad that these stories are being told and that people are starting to take value in these things, not just kind of blindly walking around without kicking the tires on how these processes work.
Great. I got an audience question from Otto. He felt that the fundraising emails felt canned, sometimes misleading. For example, donate to qualify for the next debate after the polls were already done. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, so that's a piece. I feel like there are folks who've worked on the political email infrastructure forever, and certainly, and I feel like this way about any different part of the industry. It's like you have a playbook, you go with it, and in a large extent, there are algorithms to say how often you should be emailing and to what extent what the content should look like. After a while, a lot of that stuff does feel canned, but I guess the science suggests that that's the direction that you're supposed to take with these emails. Now, in terms of it feeling misleading or other pieces like that, I really can't speak to that a whole lot. I would say that even approaching deadlines, a lot of candidates will use certain I don't want to call them gimmicks, but at the very least, ways to kind of grasp new donors and new interest and just show basically the importance and in a lot of ways just the urgency of getting towards certain fundraising goals. Mm-hmm. And kind of again to what I was talking about with those debate thresholds, the way those things were constructed just made, instead of what I thought was the purpose of having these early states so that candidates could really just focus on campaigning in those states and reserve their resources to do that. I felt like a lot of candidates were more focused on hitting those thresholds. And to that extent, it's like, I feel like candidates were doing things that they wouldn't normally do in a setting like this. I mean, looking back at some of the giveaways, like, I don't want to say that certainly it was beneath some of the candidates, but it's like, we're taking shots with senators. We're cooking paella with members of Congress. Like, I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to be. So yeah, I mean, that's a part of, like, as they call it, the collective sausage making process that for those that are paying attention, it does feel a little bit hokey, but to get a campaign operating, it unfortunately takes a whole lot of money. And in order to get there, you have to create an urgency. And certainly I know for a fact, Andrew wouldn't want content out there that feels disingenuous, but he also is a big believer in trusting the experts and empowering them to do the right job. So yeah, that's a tough one.
Well, Erick, I know we're out of time, but we'll have to have you back on to talk about the future. I'm as excited, maybe more excited about 2024 than 2020. So there's a lot of big changes coming soon, I'm guessing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I will say this the next couple of months are going to be interesting. No one anticipated a completely remote campaign for the presidency. And certainly I don't think either camp is comfortable in the position that they're at. And I always envision that if we weren't in quarantine, Andrew would likely be out either campaigning on behalf of his endorsed candidates or campaigning towards a general. So we'll have to see how things shake out. I mean, for Andrew, he pretty much is living in a limitless situation where his opportunities are abundant, and whether it's giving money out through Humanity Forward, or perhaps going towards elected office, or perhaps another presidential. Whatever Andrew does next, at least we have all these great learning lessons and incredible people like you, Tom, to help lift that next step up. And I mean, I feel like your job has in some ways started, but hasn't yet started because we're going to have a lot more to do.
Oh yeah, my friend. I intend for us to be on the air for many, many years until at least it's gonna be a long marathon, but it'll be worth it at the end.
Absolutely, and you know, obviously, I know Andrew feels this way. I certainly do, and everyone in the ethos really appreciates all the great work that you do. Just basically uplifting this important platform, and I feel like when the history is told of the people that were doing great things in order to help our country, Tom, certainly you're on that list for sure.
Oh, and right, you know, way underneath your name, Eric. So thank you for everything that you did for the campaign. And we'll be working together and fighting the fight for a while until we get the real change that America deserves. So I'm
110%, brother.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. And with that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Oh, that might have been the best goodbye, nerds I've heard. Keep it real, my friend.
Take care, my friend. We will talk soon.
Gang, gang, 2020. Gang, gang, 2020. Gang, gang, 2020. Gang, gang. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang. Yeah, yeah. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang. Yeah. I want 1,000 a month, 1,000 a month. I want 1,000 a month, 1,000 a month. Let's get this bread. Freedom dividend. Are all y'all paying attention? Automation gonna sweep the nation unless we get him in. Andrew Yang, 2020 freedom dividend. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, yeah, yeah. First we get this money, then on 420. He gonna give some high fives to some high guys. Decriminalize marijuana so we can smoke if we wanna. Down with the opioid trend, up with the mental health thing. Yeah, math, yo, it's just math. Yo, it's simple math. Yo, can you do math? Yo, yo. Eliminate super PACs, color stars making stacks. Student loan forgiveness plan. Cops wearing cameras and climate change is real again. Science rules. Teachers bringing home some bread. Medicare for every citizen. Andrew Yang, 2020 freedom dividend. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, yeah, yeah. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, yeah, yeah.